Welcome. We are talking politics and religion without killing each other. I am your host, Corey Nathan. It's an honor to be a part of the Democracy Group. The Democracy Group never had more meaning than right now, since I've been saying it since we joined the network. So the Democracy Group is a network of podcasts that examines what's broken in our democracy and how we can work together to fix it. Now, be sure subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm really excited about it. We're putting whole segments up there with video. We have links in the show notes to make it easy to find. And of course, follow us, review us, join the Patreon. It all helps so we could continue having great conversations and thinking through important subjects like the one I wanted to address today. And as much as at least half the population would not want to consider, we have to think about it. And that is, what will actually happen if Trump wins? Now, there's obviously a lot of people, many voters. I'm estimating about 47% of voters who really relish that possibility. But, it's going to be a tight race one way or the other. And the folks who are not in favor of another Trump term, including me, let's just put it out there right up front. There has been plenty of hand-wringing and panicking from folks who are opposed to another Trump term. And there's also been plenty of big promises on the part of Trump, a rewriting of history that his campaign is largely based on and that many of his supporters are buying into, and a sort of dismissiveness or even complete denial about what he's done and what he realistically will do if he's put in power again. And listen, there have been plenty of other writers, historians, and analysts who've done a lot of work on this possibility of what if Trump wins another term. The one I spent a lot of time diving into was the edition of The Atlantic that came out in January of this year. So the February 2024 edition of The Atlantic. Some of my favorite writers contributed in-depth pieces to that one, including Tom Nichols and Ann Applebaum, both of whom have subsequently appeared on this program, as well as others whose voices I really value, like David Frum. So definitely check that out. But now, we're just days away from the election, and this thing seems to still be a coin flip. So I figured it's worth taking a stab at it myself. But real quick, before I get into my thoughts on what could realistically happen if Trump wins, it's worth mentioning again what we can anticipate as surely as the sun rising in the east if he loses. And that is, he will not concede and he will not participate in a peaceful transfer of power. And that to me is disqualifying. That for me is the only policy worth discussing when it comes to Trump. You want to talk about taxes, tariffs, NATO, how he'll somehow magically ride in on a white horse and bring peace and prosperity to the entire globe. Forgetting what his administration was actually like. We can go there. I mean, I'm happy to talk about his actual record, including what so many of his top cabinet members and advisors are now saying about him. And the alarms so many of them are sounding, as much as many of my friends who still support him, who somehow that were on the fence, who somehow come around to supporting Trump again, as much as some of these friends want to dismiss what his Secretary of Defense, Jim Mattis, his head of General, Jim Mattis, his head of the Department of Homeland Security, and who went on to be his longest serving chief of staff, General John Kelly, his head of the Joint Chiefs of the military, Mark Milley, his vice president, Mike Pence, all people he hired. Remember, all the best people, and so many others that served at all levels of his administration, which so many of them are now saying, we could talk about it. But first, before we talk about any policies, the only policy that's worth addressing is one of the basic pillars of our democracy. Will he affirm our democratic process and concede if he loses? And he's already demonstrating that he will not. So there's that. But like I said, we also have to consider what can realistically happen, what we can realistically expect if Trump wins. So what I'm going to try to do is avoid hyperbole or some of the more general language, some of the jargon that's now just it's part of the noise that so many people are tuning out. I'm going to try to give you specific scenarios that aren't far-fetched, that are based on what's already happened and what's still happening in many ways. And I'll try to draw this line forward. Now, I could look at this in terms of what we can expect from different parts of the media, what different media outlets or individual journalists might do, like how will media entities contribute to or respond to what's happening. I'm also most really interested in what each of us will do, or as individual citizens, and what will our neighbors do. But today, I just want to stay focused. I just want to talk about what Trump will do realistically. So let's dive in. Again, the question is, what will Trump do if he's reelected? What can we reasonably expect if Trump wins another term? And as I thought about it, there are a few things that aren't far-fetched at all. There's plenty of things that we can make reasonable projections, but I'm just diving into a small handful that hit home, very close to home for me, and that we can reasonably expect. Any reasonable person who's been paying attention to what Trump's been saying since he decided to get involved in politics, what he did when he was in office, and what he's continued to say since he was beaten in 2020. And he was beaten like a dog in 2020. We can make some logical conclusions about what will happen next. And the way I think about it, building on what I've already said about how he'll react if he loses, can be summed up by saying something I heard Mark Cuban say in an interview this weekend. Democracy will take a step back. Democracy will take a step back. This isn't hyperbole. I'm not saying democracy will die or that our constitutional republic or our American experiment will come to a complete end, but I am saying that it will take a step back, and in very specific ways. For example, just in looking at our basic freedoms as articulated in the First Amendment, it doesn't take a huge leap to say that there will be continued attacks on the press. Except in a new Trump term, he won't have the kinds of people in his administration who will reel in the president from his worst impulses. There won't be guys like Jeff Sessions or Bill Barr, guys who say what you will about their politics. They at least understood the rule of law as opposed to the rule of a king, which is why they both came to a point where they were directly at odds with what Trump was trying to do and what he was even asking them to do. So if Trump says to, I don't know, pick it out of the air, Attorney General Mike Johnson in a new Trump term, or Eileen Cannon or Kash Patel, he could say, go and sue CBS or the New York Times or Maggie Haberman as an individual reporter because a story comes out that he doesn't like. Go and investigate them, arrest them, make their lives miserable with all the levers of power that Trump has as president and the Justice Department has that isn't beholden to the rule of law, but to the whims of a childish, vengeful, petty, power-starved narcissist. And if you don't think that he'd hire an AG who'd carry out a command like that, and that he'd launch these kinds of attacks against any journalist or journalistic outlet that he didn't like, you're just not paying attention. He's tried to do this. He's been doing versions of this through the civil process his entire career, ever since he was Roy Cohn's apprentice. The Apprentice, by the way. If you haven't seen it in theaters yet, just take the time to see it. It's a really interesting character study about how one willingly, slowly, gradually suffocates one's own soul. It's these two characters. Anyway, I'm getting off track. Anyway, he's tried to do this ever since he was Roy Cohn's apprentice, and he'll absolutely take these attacks against the press and his attack on this basic freedom. The founders wrote it into the First Amendment. He'll take all of these attacks to a level we haven't seen in the history of this country. Another First Amendment freedom that will be directly under attack is the freedom of assembly. Again, we've seen this before. His closest advisors have testified under oath and have subsequently confirmed what Trump said on multiple occasions throughout his presidency. And he continues to confirm in his own speeches day after day. We saw what he did in June of 2020 when he cleared peaceful protesters from Lafayette Square. We know that he wanted his generals, as he calls them, to fire on protesters that he didn't like. Just fire at their feet, he said. Whether he's talking about real bullets, rubber bullets coming in with tanks, the National Guard, the military, like he said repeatedly in interviews just in the last few days and weeks, or anything else, the right of the people peaceably to assemble. It's right there, right in the First Amendment. And as we've discussed many times in this program, our rights need defending and protecting, specifically when we disagree, but not with somebody like Trump. His words from the campaign trail and his actions as president have again and again demonstrated his willingness and desire, not just to combat, free speech and assembly he disagrees with by means of other speech, but through violence, by means of force. He said just the other day, this was one of the quotes, and he's repeated it in numerous, repeated versions of this in numerous interviews. He said, quote, "I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within." That's what he said. And he goes on. He said, "We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics, and I think they're the big, and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can't let that happen." End quote. And then as much as J.D. Vance or Lindsey Graham or anyone else tries to walk it back and say, well, what he was really saying, Trump just goes out the next day and specifies exactly who he's talking about, whether it's Adam Schiff or the Pelosi's or just people he determines to be radical left sickos. Like, I don't know, the hundreds of thousands of citizens who participated in the women's marches of 2017. Anyone who peaceably assembles, who doesn't happen to be on his side. He's made it clear again and again. So if he's president, we know that he won't have a Jim Mattis as a Secretary of Defense, or a Mark Milley as the head of the Joint Chiefs, or even a Pat Cipollone as his White House counsel. That they're the ones that restrained him from these un-American impulses. Make no mistake, they're un-American. He'll have a Stephen Miller saying, yes, sir, let's go in there and take them all out. Let's round them up and arrest them, regardless of where the protesters are assembling peaceably and within their constitutional rights. Stephen Miller said this. He said it loud and clear, as have others. Kash Patel has said this. Round them up, arrest them first, and let, lawfare catch up with us later. Because they know that legal processes take years and years, and they could do what they want, if he has willing supplicants around him, which he'll do in the next term. We know this. The other thing we know has happened and continues to happen, and will keep on happening, is his hijacking of religion. His co-opting of specifically Christian symbols and language that he's ripped out of Christian-ish sounding words and phrases. He's literally selling Trump Bibles, MAGA Bibles, just like he held a Bible upside down, no less, a fitting bit of symbolism in itself, in front of St. John's Church right after he had peaceful protesters forcibly removed to clear his way for his little Bible photo op. Just like he had one of his speakers at the big rally at Madison Square Garden hold up a cross and scream about Kamala, as they call her, being the Antichrist. And look, I'll go toe to toe with just about anyone who comes to Scripture. So if you want to go there, we can. We can look at what God's word says about Christian virtues in the New Testament, what's referred to as the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, self-control. Does Donald Trump have any of that? Any of it? But I get pushback. Let's think about that. Surely he has love. There's so much love, he says, so much love. Well, what does the Bible say about love? Love is patient. Love is kind. It is not jealous. Love does not brag. It is not arrogant. It does not act disgracefully. It does not seek its own benefit. Its own benefit does not seek it. It is not provoked, does not keep an account of wrong suffered. It does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth. It keeps every confidence. It believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. I don't know. You want me to go through it again? Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. Seems to me Trump is on exactly the wrong side of this equation, this understanding of love. Oh, but that's some liberal propaganda. No, sport. No, I literally have people say that to me. Whether it's in Facebook or at, over a beer, coffee, what have you. Oh, that's just some liberal. Nope. Sorry, sport. That's what we call the Bible. Quoting directly from the Bible. You want to, but that's just New Testament. You want to do Hebrew Bible? You want to go to the Old Testament? Let's do some OT. There are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that run rapidly to evil, a false witness who declares lies, a false witness who declares lies, and one who spreads strife among brothers. You know what's funny is somebody sent me just that last part. Somebody who spread strife among brothers as a way to exhort me not to criticize Trump, because apparently I was spreading strife among brothers. And I said, "Hey, dude, you might want to read the rest of the proverb." Oh man. So we can't, me criticizing a most ungodly individual is spreading strife, but sending me, like, taking a scalpel and taking a portion of a verse within a passage within a chapter and telling me that I'm spreading strife. I don't know, man. Maybe I am. I never pretend to be the chosen one or, perfect. I'm a Christian, but I ain't Christ. I love Jesus, but I ain't him. That I know. But when somebody just sends me this, I'm like, "Hey, dude, let's keep on reading. Let's see what it says." You know, Again, even Trump's most devoted supporters, unless you're in 100% denial, can't look at the scripture and come out thinking Trump's getting good grades in these subjects. And then of course you get, "Oh, well, what about Biden? What about Kamala?" No, we're not going to do that. We don't have to what about everything, because frankly, it's intellectual and moral laziness. It's a way for people to let themselves off the hook. It's a distraction that we don't have to submit to. We're talking about Trump right now and what'll happen if he gets back into office. The point of me bringing all this up is that he will continue to degrade the witness of the church in this country by, one, being the most anti-God, anti-godly character we could have ever imagined for the role of president. 2, by trading on pitting different sides against each other, whether it's one religion against another, or even people within the same religion against each other. I grew up Jewish, so I hear what he says. If you don't vote for me, you're a bad Jew. Churches that I know about have absolutely fallen apart because in many churches, the most prominent orthodoxy is MAGA orthodoxy. At the very least, it's the only accepted orthodoxy that all other voices have to acquiesce or keep silent. Just shh, quiet. And we know those who've expressed concerns about Donald Trump or the direction of the church and supported Donald Trump have been ostracized, abused, excommunicated, or even worse. Go back and listen to the conversation I had with David French if you haven't already. But before I forget, Trump will continue to degrade the witness of the church by, 3, continuing to elevate this mass level of idolatry. That's what it is. He places himself in a position of a modern day Messiah. I am the chosen one. He said that word for word. I am the chosen one. So again, if Trump is given another term, democracy will take a step back, specifically in terms of First Amendment rights being refused and torn apart, like the freedom of the press. Journalists will be attacked, litigated, and we already see the owners of major outlets suffocating, just suffocating the voices of their reporters and editorial boards. We saw it a couple times in this last week. We're already seeing it. The freedom of assembly and speech will be under direct threat, as Trump has demonstrated by his actions when he was in office and spelled out in numerous speeches just in the last few days and weeks. And that he'll sic the military on gatherings that he deems to be radical left wackos, as he would call them. Whatever he calls them, however much he disagrees with them, the Constitution protects our rights to peaceably assemble. But I doubt he's read the Constitution. I doubt he understands the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. He doesn't care. He's shown he doesn't care by his past actions and is telling us exactly what he'll do. And I don't believe much of what comes out of his Big Mac hole, but that much I believe. And yeah, he'll further erode the witness of the church in America. He'll pit Jews against Jews. He'll pit everyone against Muslims, just as he did from the very beginning. of his first campaign. He'll continue to hijack Christian symbols and Christian sounding language to pit Christians against anyone that isn't sufficiently loyal and faithful to him. As he put it himself, the chosen one. We've seen it, we know it, and it's not far-fetched. Again, I don't think it will be the end of the American experiment. That's the good news, or the end of our republic. But the Constitution will be strained beyond any other time in our history, and our democracy will take a step back. And that's just what Donald Trump will do. I haven't even gotten into how other parts of our society will react. But we can discuss that more in some upcoming episodes. I think for now, we certainly have a lot to consider. And as far as I'm concerned, even as a conservative, actually, because I'm a conservative, I really hope that come next week, our country will choose another path. Yeah, because I'm a conservative. I've said it. I've said it a number of times. I'm choosing to vote for someone that I know I'll disagree with on a number of policies and issues, but I'm choosing someone who will affirm our democratic process, who will uphold the foundations of our constitutional order. And my policy differences are part of the process. They are part of what the founders envisioned and intended. So with the days we have left, the only other thing I'll say is go vote. Vote. Maybe knock on doors, have a conversation with a neighbor, give to a campaign, or however you feel compelled to participate in the process. And as always, if you dig what we're doing here, remember to follow this show, write that review, and now you can watch these conversations on YouTube and support the program on Patreon. It's youtube.com/@politicsandreligion and patreon.com/politicsandreligion. Check them all out. Subscribe, get some TPNR swag. Your support really does make a difference. So thank you for all of it. Now go talk some politics and religion with gentleness and respect, and have a great week.